All right, hello. So our final semester project was on the California high-speed rail. Just to start off with a description of the project, the purpose of this project is to create a high-speed rail system for travel between California's major metropolitan areas, including Sacramento, LA, and San Diego, with up to 24 stations and 800 miles of track. It will connect San Francisco and Los Angeles under 3 hours with speeds up to 200 miles per hour. So the major problem with this EIS was the travel demand. So the rail system will provide a reliable mode of transportation for residents and relieve capacity constraints on the already existing transportation infrastructure. This will help economic development grow, create jobs, create a cleaner environment, and preserve agricultural and protected lands. The EIS for this project states that in the next 20 years, the number of residents requiring transportation will increase by 63%. So since this project has 24 stations and spans over 800 miles of California, they all have different geographical, environmental, and economic issues. So the EIS itself was split into 10 different sections. There is one general EIS for the complete project with site-specific EISs created for each section of the project. Each section will follow the same process of the EIS before any work is done to expand the project. So this is known as a tiered programmatic EIS, so it's not just a final EIS. The lead agencies involved in this project include the United States Department of Transportation or the Federal Railroad Administration. This is the federal lead agency for NEPA compliance, as well as the California High-Speed Rail Authority, who proposed the project. So both these agencies prepared the EIS because they both can use their authority to work together to secure financial support from the federal government. And the cooperating agencies include the Environmental Protection Agency, the Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Federal Aviation Administration. So there are many actors, both official and unofficial, involved in this EIS that include all lead and cooperating agencies, the public, and the media. So a few of the major actors are the California High-Speed Rail Authority. It is the state agency responsible for planning, designing, building, and operating the high-speed rail system in California. The California state government. So given the scale and significance of the project, various state government departments and officials are involved in decision-making and oversight. And the Federal Railroad Administration. So this is a division of the Department of Transportation, and they're involved in providing federal support and oversight for the California high-speed rail project. And California also has a State Environmental Policy Act. It's called CEQA. This requires state and local government agencies to inform decision makers and the public about the potential environmental impacts of proposed projects and to reduce these environmental impacts to the extent that they can. It's basically a little NEPA for the state. So this impacts the project by having lead and cooperating agencies having to follow CEQA procedures as well as NEPA procedures. So this will take the project longer because of both of these policies, but it'll make the impact on the environment hopefully less. So the big environmental problem with this project is the placement of the tracks and stations that can affect natural environments and communities socioeconomically. But the EIS states that a minimization of negative impacts from this project will be made when possible.
So when it comes to the description of the infected environment, the environment that is in this proposed project, it would run through as it exists before the project is implemented, consists of the majority of California's Central Valley and the urban environments within it. It also runs throughout much of the eastern San Diego metropolitan area. This infected environment thus includes everything from deserts, mountain, and forest to dense urban areas and small towns. So something that has to be considered when we're thinking about this description of the affected environment is just that there is so much that goes into this project, just because you're talking about making new railways and making different lines that go through all different kinds of environments. Like when we're talking about impacts, one that comes up a lot is that the Henry Coe State Park, a lot of environmental groups were concerned that this was going to affect and run through that state park. So that's something that all of the federal agencies and the different bodies of government that were working with this had to consider and keep into effect and mind when they were talking with all these environmental groups, because that was a major concern they had about how this would affect the environment it was being built in. You got next one. Sweet. So noise pollution is a big one that's being considered when building this railway, just because it doesn't just affect people, it affects the environment and the ecosystems that it's being built into. So there are a couple things like that come to mind that easily you can think about, like when you're sleeping and depending on the noise level, it may cause hearing impairments and just overall being disruptive. And that the noise levels produced during construction of the system is another problem outside of the actual train, because it's like the construction has to be considered an addition in this area, just because the construction is going to be a big part of the noise pollution that's happening here, which is one of the main reasons that noise pollution isn't just the train afterwards that has to be considered. So when it comes to the alternatives, there are 3 proposed alternatives. The first one is the no project alternative. And the no project alternative, it just results in no further action being taken beyond what was actually already committed to. And then the model alternative as the second one, the model alternative would deal with implementing improvements to intercity travel between the major urban areas of California that the high-speed train would theoretically service. Possible improvements would include additional traffic lanes for highways and additional gates and runways from airports. The estimated cost for this alternative would be over $82 million. The high-speed train is the proposed alternative. This alternative deals with implementing a high-speed train system that would serve the major metropolitan areas of California. The cost was estimated to be between 33 and 37 billion in 2003. Major impacts. So in addition to the noise pollution that was discussed earlier, some of the notable impacts that are predicted, they include impacts to travel conditions, air quality, land use, noise, energy use, and growth potential, which includes population growth, statewide employment growth, and urbanization growth. Of the notable impacts listed, lead and cooperation agencies prioritize the impacts of the project on travel conditions, land use, and growth potential. So diving a little more into the most significant impacts, because as previously mentioned, the most significant impacts of the project are found in the changes in travel conditions, land use, and growth potential. The impact on travel time is the most significant impact, as project deals with the shortening the distance between these major metropolitan areas. In order to put the project into motion, the land use change is necessary because somehow you have to build the infrastructure that can support such a high-speed rail. Since this project is such a large scale land change use would occur under the proposed alternative. The way that the project influences growth is another very successful important impact to assess. The jobs created during and after the project and the effect those jobs in finished project have on the economy, they have major implications for California. So during the part of the journal where it talked about the story behind this project, while we were looking, there wasn't an explicit story stated that discussed the actual story or origin behind the California high-speed rail. But when looking at the California governmental website, it explained how the rail could make employment more equitable in the state and how that was a driver for the project, because not only does this shorten the distance between different areas, shortening the distance and making it so that people don't rely on single-use transportation, that gives them access to a lot of more jobs, and just increasing the ability to travel from place to place makes that commute more feasible for people, so they could take advantage of this public transportation and have a better way to get to their jobs.
Now we're going to look from the record of decision in the final EIS. The select
HST high-speed train alternative and to reject the no action alternative, as well as the alternative, which is the highway and aviation improvements, and to eliminate certain conceptual HST corridors, alignments, and station options evaluated in the program EIR and EIS from further consideration, and to select for further consideration in the tiered environmental reviews to be prepared subsequent to the program EIR EIS, the preferred conceptual corridor alignment and station option from the HST as described in the final program EIR EIS. So those are a lot of specifics in the project. Now looking at the US EPA rating, this is the adequacy rating, and as we've talked about, the highest thing you can get is adequate, and then there's insufficient information and inadequate. An adequate rating criteria. For the adequate rating criteria, the EIS provides sufficient information that gives a thorough plan for the project, and further information may be needed, but the absence of that isn't weakening the report. And the final program impact report adequately provides, so the final environment impact report adequately provides information for the project. And then we can look at the environmental impact rating. The lowest is the highest thing you can get is the lack of objectives, and the lowest is environmentally unsatisfactory. The project report laid out that environmental objections that would or have been mitigated, but in some regions of the project, the impact is significant in the Bay Area. So the environmental impact criteria is that certain locations of the planned rail system impact endangered species, and this is specifically in the Bay Area and the coastal corridor, which is San Jose to Los Angeles. In response to this, there were mitigation strategies developed, which included protecting air quality and more noise reduction measures, as well as protection from hazardous waste. Now we're going to apply the Kingdon's 3 streams. The first stream we're looking at is the problem stream. We found a focusing event, which is the increased amount of pollution released from automobiles and planes, along with high levels of traffic congestion for highways and airlines. This is both related to the growing population in California, and this is seen to be an increasing problem. So that the next stream we're looking at is the policy stream. Different interest and advocacy groups provided studies and or action plans to solve that the public had identified. Some of those advocacy groups include Spur, Reason Foundation, California is advocating for responsible rail design. This shows how there was a policy initiative to make this happen. And then the final stream is the political stream. We picked an event, which was the 2008 presidential election that resulted in more opportunities for high-speed rail projects. This was something that the Obama administration pushed for and created federal funding opportunities for across the country, not just in California. And if you look at that map, you can see other places where high-speed rail or to this one. And the final thing we can apply are the Sustainable Development Goals that have been pushed by the UN in recent years. The first thing that we identified is goal number 8, which is job creation. This is seen through both creating the building of the project for the high-speed trains and maintaining those high-speed rails. And also for the growing population within California, it's a way to make sure people are getting to their jobs. It gives people more flexibility, and it's supporting that growing population in California. And then it's also number 9, which is investment in infrastructure. This one is kind of obvious, seen through how we're building up infrastructure in California. And this is a completely new system, and it is also making sure that this already congested highway system is finding a solution. Number 11 is reducing dependency on air and road travel, reducing vehicle emissions. This one is also self-explanatory. We're decreasing travel on the road and planes, and this is less emissions. And as the EIS explained, that there is going to be lower emissions because of this project. And then the final goal that we identified is sustainable transportation between dense metro areas. And that's exactly what this goal and this project is looking to do. There's
multiple metro areas in California that need transportation from each, and it's going to be done with this project. And I think that is all for the Sustainable Development Goals and for this project. And here are our references.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.